On today's show, Monty gets the green light, Rashawn is gone again, and we'll talk about faces in the crowd or lack thereof at Golden One Center. That's all coming up on the Royal Report.
Welcome back to Royal Rebounds. This is the Royal Report, episode 11, a Sacramento Kings sports talk show. If you're a Kings fan, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you enjoy content like this, consider subscribing to the channel and make sure you hit that notification cowbell as well.
Thanks for joining us again, Royal family. It is another fantastic Friday, and we'll jump right into the show here the same way we always do with some league news. Brooklyn and Milwaukee may be the favorites still to come out of the East, but neither of them has the conference's best record. The Chicago Bulls are in the midst of an 8-game winning streak and now sit atop the East. Chicago has been taken to another level this season thanks to newcomer DeMar DeRozan. The former Raptors and Spurs swingman has found a new home in the Windy City, averaging 27 points, 5 rebounds, and 4.5 assists a game, while shooting a career-high 36% from three. DeMar has been dumb man in the clutch for Chicago. No one has been better in the fourth quarter this season than DeRozan. When he shoots it, it goes in. This week, he became the first player in NBA history with game-winning buzzer beaters on consecutive days. And what's wilder, Barry, is that they happened in 2 different years. The first came on New Year's Eve in Indiana, followed by another on New Year's Day against the Wizards. Coincidentally, Chicago will look to make it 9 in a row tonight, also against Washington. Barry, do the Bulls have what it takes to win the Eastern Conference?
Well, I think it's a little bit early to decide on that, but they're definitely looking really, really good, and they're playing great basketball. They are going to have to look out for the Milwaukee Bucks and the Brooklyn Nets. They are getting some guys back to action, and I expect both of those teams to be very, very competitive as the season moves on as well. Speaking of competitors, we saw Russell Westbrook the other night in the Lakers-Kings game break another record. Russell Westbrook snaps a 407-game streak of at least 1 turnover per game. He had 0 turnovers against your Sacramento Kings. The previous record was held by James Harden, 239 games with a consecutive turnover. Not moving in the right direction, Cal.
No, it's quite a streak. It's nearly 5 seasons with at least 1 turnover per game. How about another streak? 21 consecutive seasons playing with the same franchise. Dirk Nowitzki is the only player to play that many years with the same team, and now his number 41 will never be worn by another Mavericks player again. Dallas held a ceremony for Dirk on Wednesday night after they defeated the Golden State Warriors. Friends, family, and former teammates were all in attendance to celebrate the greatest shooting big man of all time. The tall, lanky kid from Germany ended up with one of the greatest careers the NBA has ever seen. 14 All-Star selections, the 2007 MVP, NBA champion/finals MVP in 2011, and the 6th most points scored in NBA history. Barry, up next for Dirk undoubtedly will be Springfield, Massachusetts, and the Hall of Fame.
Oh, most definitely. You know, I had a love and hate relationship with Dirk, the jerk, because he just kept making shots. I wish he was on the Kings, but, you know, you got to hate the players that aren't on your team that constantly destroy your team. But, you know, as a basketball fan, it was great to, you know, be able to witness the greatness. And what a long and incredible career for Dirk Nowitzki. Speaking of guys and careers, Kyrie Irving just stepped back onto the floor with the Brooklyn Nets, scoring 22 points in his season debut back from his, exile from the Brooklyn Nets. He is now officially a part-time player and will play in road games for the Nets. And don't look soon, but Klay Thompson will also be returning to the West's number 1 seed, the Golden State Warriors. I think this is going to give them a huge boost. And everybody else better be looking out.
Yeah, you got that right.
All right, moving on here. So another awesome week of Kings basketball. Not in the wins column, though. Only 1 win this week, 3 losses for your Sacramento Kings. They lost against the Mavericks without Luka Doncic. They were able to beat the Heat with late game-winning shot missed by Jimmy Butler. We saw a loss to the Lakers where Fox had 30, and Buddy also shot well, making 7 3-pointers in that game. And then another loss, a terrible loss to the Atlanta Hawks, who are missing Tre Young, Bogdan Bogdanovic, DeAndre Hunter, and many, many more players, including John Collins. I saw a quote from Tyrese after the game. He says, "I don't think we've beat a team this season that's missing their best player." Not a good look for your Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, you're right. The common theme this week for the Kings was high-profile players on the other team not playing and the Kings not being able to convert and win any of those games. They did manage to get one against the Miami Heat. We did, on the bright side, see Tyrese Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox play well together this week. We saw the first game that the two of them scored 20 or more points in the same game so far since they've been teammates, which is great. De'Aaron Fox has continued to play really, really, really well, but it hasn't been enough. Untimely turnovers. The Kings, we always talk about it being one of the main factors with whether this team is successful or not. They had 18 turnovers, the most this week against, I believe it was the Lakers.
Yep.
And averaging 14 turnovers per game in that 4-game stretch. That combined with not enough defensive stops, again, just isn't enough for the Kings to string together consecutive victories.
And some untimely calls by the referees as well, and a shot clock operator.
Yes, yeah, all the extracurriculars. When you're losing, they tend to be bigger stories, right? Well, moving on here, Monte McNair, as it has been reported earlier this week, has been given the green light by Kings owner Vivek Ranadive. He's made it crystal clear that every player on the current roster should be made available in trade talks. Sacramento is now 16-24 on the season. They are a half game back of the San Antonio Spurs for 10th in the Western Conference. And the pressure has never been greater for the Kings to make a move that will keep them in the playoff hunt. With the February 10th trade deadline rapidly approaching, it's just over a month away. The Kings are expected to be one of the more active teams, but time is running out. So, Barry, when will we see a deal, and will it be a blockbuster-type trade?
Well, I'm still going to stick with my prediction. The Kings are going to make a trade before January 18th. You asked me why. I'm going to tell you I don't know. For some reason, I felt it, and that's the prediction that I made, and I'm sticking with it for now. As far as the team goes, as you mentioned, they are currently 16-24. They need to make a move. I've seen a lot of fans talk about Vivek and what he needs to say to Monty to make him do something, but I do have to say, on a positive note, I think Vivek is doing the right thing at this point. I think he is keeping his hand out of basketball operations, and I think that's exactly what this Kings team needs. I'm not going to make a trade just to make a trade on this team. I'm only making deals if it helps improve this roster, but the pressure is gaining on Monty. He did fire Luke Walton, and that shows that he is willing to make moves and that he thinks that this Kings team can do much better things than they have done so far. I saw an article by USA Today saying the Kings still have a lot of interest in a Ben Simmons trade. I'm not sure exactly where I sit on this. I don't know what to expect from Ben Simmons this far into the season, but I think it's very, very clear, Calvin, that a move needs to be made, and it needs to be made very soon.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. A move definitely needs to be made. And it should certainly be easier for Monte McNair to do something like that if every player on the roster is at his disposal for a trade. You know, you have to feel like guys like De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton are clearly going to be the people that net the biggest return in any type of deal. So the Kings, as we've talked about before, they need to pick a lane, make a decision in terms of a style of play and people to build around, and then go on from there. The problem for them is going to be that outside of those two guys, De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton, I'm not sure what type of major deal or really roster improving deal can be made with any of the other guys. So you're probably going to have to include one of these two people or these two top players in your organization if you're really thinking about still pushing towards the playoffs and improving this year. They also have the opposite direction they could take take, which is to tank, right? And to deal these guys away for draft picks or young players and plan for the future. I don't think anybody in Sacramento wants to see that happen necessarily, but I do think that everybody who is a Kings fan just wants to see some type of move be made.
Yeah, and we saw Monte travel to LA this week to the brand new Crypto.com arena, fueling speculation that the Kings were going to be making another trade with the Lakers. We saw Buddy Hield and Jeannie Buss before the game shaking hands and laughing. So it's really yet to be told what exactly is going to happen. But I think we all agree, and all Kings fans are feeling the pressure that something needs to be done sooner rather than later. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to jump into Rashawn Holmes. Welcome back. We know you're back, but where is Rashawn Holmes? Rashawn Holmes has currently been sidelined for 3 games due to the NBA's health and safety protocols. This is marking his 13th missed game of the season due to illness, getting poked in the eye, and also dealing with these COVID protocols. Rashawn started out the season red hot, and he has not played so well in between some of these injuries. His last 5 games on the court, he's only had 1 game where he has averaged over or scored over double digits in points. On the season, he's currently averaging 12 points, 8 rebounds on an incredible 69% shooting from the field and 80% from the free throw line. He has 6 games with over 20-plus points this season, including 1 20-point, 20-rebound game this year. Calvin, he's been playing well, and we all know he's an integral part of the team, but when he doesn't play well or he's missing in action, the Kings definitely struggle. When can we expect Rashawn Holmes to return?
That's a good question. He's obviously going to have to clear the health and safety protocols, hopefully sooner than later, especially since the league has reduced the amount of time that you have to miss once you go into those protocols. But you hit it right on the head. This guy is such an important piece to what this Kings team does. He's coming off basically a career year in all categories last season, and despite being, having illnesses and being injured, having to adjust to playing with goggles again, he's still putting up relatively close to the same types of numbers as he was last year. The thing for him is just being consistently on the court. He's developed a special connection with Tyrese Halliburton. As Tyrese has taken the next steps in his game, we've seen him and Rashawn Holmes, play so well together. And I expect, as long as Tyrese is on the Kings, that you should expect to see Rashawn Holmes with him paired up. His only real issue, or his biggest critique, is that he's undersized for a center. But I feel like if you pair him alongside with a legit starting power forward, someone that you can count on to be in the lineup with him every night, they can work around that. Defensively, they can mix up the matchups. It will help with rebounding as well. And Rashawn is definitely one of the pieces that makes this Kings team go. So they just need him back healthy on the court.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, he's got a great connection with Tyrese Halliburton. However, he did sign a contract extension this offseason, and he does become trade eligible January 14th. I think it's a really, really reasonable contract for the output that he has. So I would definitely keep my eyes on Rashawn and see what happens with the Sacramento Kings at that center position.
Yeah, certainly anything could happen with this team. As we just mentioned, all players are available. So like Rashawn Holmes, many NBA players have been in the health and safety protocols this season, which has given an opportunity or a second chance for some other guys to make lasting careers in the league. There are a lot of ex-Kings in this boat. People like DeMarcus Cousins, Isaiah Thomas, even Tyreke Evans has been in the headlines recently as he's eligible to be reinstated to the NBA this year. Barry, which one of these ex-Kings do you think stands the best chance at going from the 10-day contract to a full-time rotation player?
That's an interesting question. You look at talent-wise, you say, okay, Isaiah Thomas is probably one of the most talented guys. DeMarcus Cousins is probably one of the most talented guys. Both of these guys have dealt with pretty severe injuries throughout their career. I love what I'm seeing out of Kyle Guy in Miami. I expect him to, re-sign maybe another 10-day contract with the Heat. I think he fits that team perfectly, and I think he will fit in very well with that culture in Miami. But I just want to go over this list here because we talk about the Kings missing the playoffs for 15 consecutive years. We talk about dysfunction within the team, the front office, all these players, the team passing on players in the draft and maybe not doing what they should when they do have high draft picks. You go over this list here. DeMarcus Cousins currently just got released by the Bucks. Isaiah Thomas is currently with the Mavs on a 10-day contract. He is in COVID protocols. Jason Thompson just signed with a G League team. Kyle Guy and Nick Stauskas are both with the Miami Heat on 10 days. Ben McLemore is currently with the Portland Trail Blazers. And as you mentioned, Tyreke Evans is eligible for reinstatement. He has not been reinstated yet, but he is eligible at this point. So you look at all these ex-Kings, a lot of these guys are very, very talented and have done things in their NBA career, just not really with Sacramento other than maybe, the first part of Isaiah Thomas's career and DeMarcus Cousins. But there's a lot of talent here, a lot of guys who have had tough situations, and I'm happy to see, most of these guys have another chance in the NBA right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. You got to be happy for all of these guys, especially Isaiah Thomas, who's had such a long and tough road back to the league. I expect DeMarcus Cousins will end up with another team somewhere, probably a contending team, probably the Lakers or the Nets or something like that, the Warriors. Even though he's already played for two of those teams, it's kind of funny. But he's just the type of person, given his skill set, a contending team can take a flyer on him for a low contract, low amount of money. I agree with you, though. Kyle Guy, I think, is in a great fit in Miami. His skill set fits what that team does. Really good outside shooter, scrappy player, kind of the same mold as Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson, even though he's not, as tall or the caliber of player that those two guys are. I think it's a good fit in Miami. I would expect to see him continue to play on that team throughout the rest of the season. And yeah, you have to hope that all these guys can find their homes somewhere. I found it pretty surprising that Jason Thompson is back playing basketball. I don't even know how old that guy is or when the last time he played was. That was really surprising to me.
Yeah, I think he has the record for most games played in a Sacramento Kings jersey, which is pretty wild considering I think he spent maybe 7 or 8 seasons in Sacramento. That's it. That just goes to show you the constant turnover that we've had in Sacramento. And speaking of DeMarcus Cousins, the guy he was traded for, Buddy Hield, is still on the Sacramento Kings, but for how long? We saw him during that Lakers game or beforehand shaking hands with Jeannie Buss, laughing, talking. We know he's a big Lakers fan and was a big fan of Kobe Bryant when he was a child. We saw the trade that could have happened in the offseason end up falling apart, and the Lakers end up trading for Russell Westbrook instead. Buddy Hield has had a very up and down season. He's averaging 15.7 points per game this season. He's only shooting 39% from the field. He has 2 years and $39 million left on this deal. So, Calvin, that just begs me to ask you, do you expect Buddy Hield to remain on this team for the next month or so? And do you expect him to be on this team towards the end of the season?
No, I don't expect it. I do think that he's probably the number one player on this team that the Kings want to move. They wanted to move him ever since, draft day earlier this year. You think about the type of season he's had within the Kings roller coaster season. It's been a roller coaster of his own, going from that draft day trade that fell through to then being relegated to the bench, not in the starting lineup anymore. We've seen him shoot really, really well. We've seen him be Buddy Chuckets. He really has been all over the place. You mentioned his shooting percentage. He's still shooting 38% from three, but that's actually the worst percentage he's shot since his second year in the league. So he is down in a lot of statistical categories, and a lot can be made out of that, whether it's him coming off the bench, whether he's disengaged from the team that he expected to be traded from, before the season started. I do think that it makes the most sense for the Kings to move him sooner rather than later, though. The Kings are guard heavy. They need wings. They need front court players. And Buddy, you throw in his defense, his playmaking, his basketball IQ, which really hasn't always been there. He's going to be the first person, the odd man out on this team, I believe.
Yeah, and if he does want to go to the Lakers, I think he had a pretty good audition this week, making 7 3-pointers against them in a Sacramento Kings loss. We're going to take another quick break here, and when we get back, we're going to answer questions from you. That's right. Cowbell Questions is coming up.
Welcome back. We're ringing the bell. It is our favorite time here on the Royal Report, Cowbell Questions, where we turn to you, the viewers, to give us your burning Sacramento Kings questions. Let's get our first one here from producer Vinny.
I think Tyrese is better than Fox. If you have to trade one, which would it be?
Well, that's a tough question here, one that Calvin and I have been trying to answer over the last month or two in all of our post-game videos. But, for me, it's really about what you're going to get back in a trade. I think these are both young players that have really high ceilings. They're both great players that do a lot of things that I love. But if I'm looking at this basketball team, I think there's ways to improve this team. I think there's positions that need to be filled. So, I would put both of those guys out there. I'd hold them out there. I'd see what offers I get. But ultimately, a trade that I'm making has to improve this Sacramento Kings team. And if I did have to choose one, I'm going to say I think De'Aaron Fox will probably bring back more value that I can add around Tyrese Halliburton than the other way around.
Yeah, you're right. It really does come down to what you're bringing back in return for either one of these guys. But I still think it comes down to picking a style of play and the type of team that you want to build, plus the type of player that you want to build around. I think both of these guys you could do that with. Tyrese Halliburton, I believe, has more potential in terms of there are more players you could bring in that would fit around him. His style of game is more conducive to a wider range of players. He would work really well with outside shooters, 3-and-D guys, as well as, serious front court players who are good in the pick and roll and lob threats. Whereas De'Aaron Fox, it might be a more deadly combination if you found the right big man to put next to him. So it's really a difficult riddle to solve here for the Kings, and it's all going to depend on what offers are out there. I'm still really hesitant to trade De'Aaron Fox, though. I will admit that. Next question.
Who would you trade first, Bagley or Buddy?
Well, that's a tough one. I think I anticipate both of these players being moved before the end of the year. But if I had to choose one, I'm going to trade Buddy Hield. I think that Marvin Bagley, I like what he's done at the 4 position when he did have his limited starts. I like the rebounding that I've seen out of him lately. I haven't seen him make many late game mistake errors, mental errors, stuff like that. He doesn't have the ball in his hand as much, and he hasn't been out there as much. But just all these things that I've seen from Buddy Hield just makes me think that it's time to move on from Buddy Chuckets.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this is a difficult one at all. It's got to be Buddy Hield for me. From the standpoint of just a fit for this team, first and foremost. We already mentioned that the Kings are a guard-heavy team. They need more front court players. They need more wings. So if you trade Marvin Bagley, that leaves you depleted again at a power forward position that they're really searching for an answer at already. Buddy Hield just hasn't given me enough consistency, not just from defense and playmaking and things like that, but from shooting, which is supposed to be his best attribute. I think Marvin has made a lot of strides this year. I've liked what I've seen from him on the defensive end. You mentioned the rebounding has been great, particularly on the offensive glass. He's really been a good, headhunter for the basketball when the Kings are on offense. I think that you can use Marvin Bagley in a lot of ways going forward. What people are going to be disappointed with is that he may never live up to the overall expectations of that number 2 pick that the Kings used on him. He's still going to be a really serviceable player in this league for a long time, though.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Next question.
Who's the best mascot in the NBA?
Well, that's the easiest question that we've gotten all season here. And I want to give a shout out to Benny the Bull because I really like him. I think he does a lot of exciting and hilarious things in the crowd with fans and all that. But I got to go with my man Slamson here. You know, as a kid, I feel like Slamson was maybe a little bit more exciting. I remember him doing dunks off of trampolines and flips and all that stuff. Maybe Slamson's a little bit older and doesn't have the hops that he used to have, but I got to go with my guy Slamson. I love seeing him rollerblading around the arena, and got to go with Slamson here.
Yeah, so I'll give a few honorable mentions here. Benny the Bull, definitely one of my all-time favorites. The Gorilla from Phoenix, I don't know if he has a name, but I liked that guy a lot. And the, like the Yeti or whatever thing they had in the Seattle, with the Seattle Supersonics, rest in peace to that mascot, but he was great too. I think the greatest individual thing I ever saw from a mascot was the Houston Rockets used to have this guy that dressed up in like a Jumpman suit with a helmet on. He stood on a 20-foot ladder behind the backboard and did a backflip with the basketball into a dunk. That was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. All that aside, I agree. I got to go with Slamson. He's got the best name in the NBA for a mascot. The rollerblading is great. Slamson, man. He's number one.
And I was at a game recently, and he was holding the calendar with like all these female lions, and he was like showing it to people in the crowd. So gotta love the sense of humor from Slamson as well.
That's right. Thank you so much. That's all the time we've got for Cowbell Questions this week. At this point, you should know the drill, but if you want to hear a question answered by Barry and I on a future show, write it down in the comment section below this video and hashtag it Cowbell Questions.
Yes. Please submit your questions. We would love to answer them. All right, moving on here. Attendance in the NBA is back this season after taking a season and a half off due to COVID. There was a bubble, there was no fans, or there was virtual fans last season. But now fans are back in the house. And apparently Sacramento fans have yet to get the message. The Kings are currently ranked 27th in the league in attendance this season. And also the hashtag boycott the Kings has been trending recently as well. Calvin, the Kings have been known to have one of the best fan bases in sports for the last 20 years or so. Do you think that Kings fans are finally frustrated enough to boycott Kings games?
I don't know about a boycott, but it definitely does feel different to me this year. Golden One Center is very quiet for a lot of these home games. I see a lot of open seats when I watch the game. I have yet to go to one, so I can't really take in the full scope of what it looks like in there. James Ham just tweeted the other day after the Kings' last home loss to Atlanta that they do this kicks cam thing where you show off your shoes. And he says that it was just an excuse to see how many people could put their feet on the empty seat in front of them. So it definitely does feel like something is a little different, and that after 15 years of not making the postseason, a lot of Kings fans, or the loyal fan base that we've grown so accustomed to, is starting to lose a little bit of faith.
Yeah, and it could have something to do with COVID as well, I guess.
That's true, it could. Well, we'll move on here to the end of our show where we take a look ahead to the next week and games of Kings basketball. The Kings are in action tonight on the road against the Denver Nuggets, and another potential MVP season from Nikola Jokic, who has really lifted that team with all the injuries around him. Barry, as you look ahead to this next week's schedule, it is not easy again for the Kings. Do you have any type of faith that Sacramento can come out with a winning record?
Well, that's a tough one. It's funny, though. You look at the schedule, there's a lot of guys missing this week on opposing teams, a lot of really, really good basketball players. We've seen that before. But yes, we have seen that this season. And as Tyrese said, I don't think we beat a team this season that's missing their best player. Tonight, again, against the Denver Nuggets, it is an away game, but no Murray, no Michael Porter Jr. As you mentioned, Jokic is playing incredible basketball. He is third right now in MVP voting for the season. I think that's going to be a very, very tough game for Sacramento, especially on the road, which, hey, they were actually playing pretty well on the road earlier this season until they've fallen off a little bit. But for me, it's really going to depend on the health of Rashawn Holmes, and when he's able to come back and help this Kings team. Then up next is the Trailblazers. It's also an away game. They're currently 14-23 on the season and just one spot below Sacramento in the Western Conference standings. Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum are both out in this game. However, many Blazers players have been stepping up as of recently, including Anthony Simons. Then the next game against the Cavaliers is at home. The Cavaliers are also missing guys due to injury. Colin Sexton is out. Ricky Rubio is out. They just traded for Rajon Rondo, and Evan Mobley is looking like a serious contender for Rookie of the Year this season. That will also be a tough game. We know this Cleveland team loves to play with size, and that has been an Achilles heel for this Sacramento Kings team. And then the last game this week is another game against the Lakers. This time it is in Sacramento. The Lakers are currently 20-19 on the season. They are still missing Anthony Davis. LeBron James is getting older, but he's aging like a fine wine. He is playing incredible, and he's actually playing the center position for them, and he's playing it exceptionally well, Calvin.
Yeah, he's doing his best Magic Johnson impersonation here, hoping to carry the Lakers into another potential title run. You're right. I mean, these games are not going to be easy regardless of who's playing. Cleveland already dismantled the Kings earlier this year in Cleveland. That's not a good matchup for them. They have had success against the Trailblazers this year, but they can't let Anthony Simons go off for another 40-point game like he just had against Atlanta. It's going to come down to the same things it always comes down to for Sacramento. They have to take care of the ball, manage those untimely turnovers. They have to get enough stops defensively, and they're going to have to shoot well from the outside. If they don't do those things, the Kings usually do not win.
Yep, exactly. All right, guys, that's it. We're at the end of the show. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you guys hit that like button down below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to join the Royal family. Calvin and I will be live tonight post game of the Kings Nuggets game, so make sure you join us on this channel for that. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good Friday, and in the meantime, go Kings.
Go Kings.